The 2001 Passat 1.8 turbo. I just did a preamp inspection. I took the pan off, put a new pickup on it, new oil pump, no sludging. But anyways, on the dropping the oil pan, it wasn't difficult at all. I just set the car on brakes the way you see it, and I made this little, I'll show you this little horse thing I made to go from fender to fender. Strap the motor up. Basically, I just took a 2x4, I cut it 57 inches, and I notched it here. I took two little 2x4s and bolted them together. Now I put these screws in the bottom. And what those screws do, when I set it up here, those screws sit right down in that hole. So I just took a little rag, laid it up here so I didn't scratch my fender. And it sets in just like that. I didn't lift it. I just put a strap, a utility strap right in here, wrapped it around, wrapped it down this way. I went right down here. I made sure I wrapped it to get over far enough, as you'll see in the picture. I went right down through here around the motor mount, back up, and I just tied it. I didn't use any ratchet, didn't lift the motor. I just used that to hold the motor in place while I dropped the frame out from underneath it. The oil pan, I've taken them off before, never on the Passat, plenty of Volkswagens. The way everybody talked about this one, it was a little intimidating. It really wasn't too bad at all. And the most trouble I had was with this front bracket. I couldn't get it out. So I had enough room though, it slid forward and the pan came down. And I dropped the subframe. Right here is a motor mount. You got like 3 bolts right here on each side. The back bolts, I didn't even take the back bolts out. I just loosened them, let them drop about 1 inch. I put a jack right up here in the transmission to hold the transmission up. Took the transmission mount off, these 2 bolts. Took that transmission mount out, just took the nut off that mount. Front motor mount, right there. Took that nut off. Front motor mount right here, took that off. Didn't unhook anything else from the motor. I suspended the motor with a strap and dropped this right down. It came down. I didn't even have to pry it or nothing. I let the subframe hang in my struts. Came down adequate room to pull this pan in and out. Now there are 2 bolts that you're going to hear about that are right up through transmission. Right through this hole right here is a bolt, and right through this hole right here is a bolt. And how you got to get to those, there's a notch. If you look up in there you can see it, but you can also see the flywheel. You got to turn the motor over, and I did it just by the belt right here on the. I worked the power or the air conditioning. One hand on the air conditioning, one hand on the power steering pump, and I was able to rock the flywheel around to line it up to get through there. I took this off, was easier. Now it's a 5mm Allen wrench that's up in there. What I did to get to it was, it's really long. So I just took a regular Allen wrench and I cut the end off of it. I stuck the Allen wrench, 5mm Allen wrench, into a 5mm socket, and I put masking tape on it. I cleaned it with alcohol so the tape would stick real good, and I masking taped it. And the reason I did that, because if you put it up in there and it pulls apart, this could fall in between the oil pan and the flywheel, and you can't get to it till you get the oil pan out. So, and the one screw is even longer, so I had put an extension on here. And I did the same thing with the extension. When I put the little 1/4-inch drive extension on there, I mask and taped the extension to it so the extension wouldn't pull apart. And this made those 2 bolts quite a bit easier. Because if you got it lined up, then you can get this right up in here on the bolt. And I just made sure that with the extension, it didn't go all the way in. Anything that went all the way in, if I put an extension, I taped it to it. So no matter what, I could get this back out. But that, I didn't have no trouble. That was pretty simple. Pretty easy little trick. And then when I put the bolt back in, I lightly taped the bolt to the Allen wrench here. But I brought the tape down long enough so when I pulled it out, the tape stayed on the nut, but I could just on the bolt, and then I just pulled the tape out. So those were, everybody was saying these are the 2 tricky bolts back here. With the, if you have an Allen wrench, it's 5mm. Actually, this will fit. This will fit in any of the pan bolts. All the pan bolts take a 10mm socket or a 5mm Allen wrench in the center. And what I did when I put the 2 in the back, there's, I believe, 18 or 20 of these little bolts that are all the same. I looked at them all, and I got the 2, they were all decent, but I got the 2 very best ones and put back in the hardest spot. I didn't reuse the 2 I took out. They're all the same length, all the same bolt. I got 2 that were still real tight on the inside and put the best 2 in back here. One thing, I made sure I got those back 2 bolts in pretty quick once I put this up, because once you put it up and the gasket sealer starts smearing around, I use the Volkswagen dry bond, which is the right stuff, right job. But once it starts moving around, if you get gasket sealer in that hole, then it makes it a little more difficult to get those 2 bolts in. So all in all, it was pretty simple.